Hi, good afternoon once again. Welcome back to our class. This is Mrs. Teresita B. Moreno. Welcome to our physical science session. So for today, we'll be discussing about biological molecules. Now, in our previous lesson last time, we were talking about the intermolecular forces of attraction and what will be the connection of these intermolecular forces of attraction with the molecules, biomolecules that are present in our body. So here are the objectives that we'll be discussing for today. One is we have to distinguish between carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. And second, we have to summarize the general characteristics of each biomolecule and relate the structures of the biomolecules with their properties. So I want you to answer first page 170 of your physical science module. This will be a true or false. You will be answering whether it is true, whether the statement is true or false. Maybe you can have 5 minutes to answer for that. Or you can pause this one for a while and answer it first. And then after you answer that, you may check it using your module. So how was your first activity? You got the correct answers? But don't you worry if not. We'll just go through with the discussion and you can re-answer again later. And let's see if you can get the correct answers. Now for this activity, here are the following words that you are going to hunt. And this activity is a word hunt game. So let's find out these 10 words that we'll be using in our discussion: biomolecule, lipid, carbohydrate, protein, monomer, nucleic acid, saccharide, amino acid, hormone, and nucleotide. So you can use up and down, left to right, or it could be a slanting position. Then try to find these different words. Maybe you can also have 5 minutes to do this, to find the 10 words that we'll be using in our discussion for today. So how was your word hunt? I hope you were able to find those 10 words and at least you have now an idea of what are those words all about, why we need to study them, and what would be the connection of these different words in our lesson for today. So for today, we'll be talking about biological molecules. We have two types of molecules, the macromolecules and the micromolecules. So for this day, we will be dealing with biological macromolecules. From the word macro, it is large. So these are organic molecules such as carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Take note, the food that we are eating are very big. They are macromolecules that our cells could not digest it or could not use it. So there should be process to be involved in order for these macromolecules be useful to our body. And these are organic compounds and functional group determines their chemical properties. So carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids contain with different elements present. And these different organic compounds, when I say organic compounds, these are compounds that consist with different elements that are useful in our body. Then third, when we talk about macromolecules, we are referring to the energy storage and protection. So mainly these different macromolecules are very essential as energy storage. At the same time, we use them for our protection. Okay, the first macromolecules that we'll be discussing for today is about the carbohydrates, and we call them as saccharide. The word carbohydrates can be broken down into two, which is carbon and hydrates. Why? Because most of the carbohydrates follow this formula, which is C, or the carbon, subscript of N, close open parenthesis, you have water, and then you have times N. So later you will be, or if you are familiar with the formula of sugar, for example, okay, since sugar is a type of saccharides, you have the formula of sugar is C6H12O6. So in this given example, there are three elements that are present: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Those are the important elements present in carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates can be classified as monosaccharides. When I say monosaccharides, it has only one saccharide, one type of sugar, while disaccharides are two, and polysaccharides can be two or more, or this can be considered as complex sugar, the polysaccharides. Remember, why do we need to eat? Why do we need to eat rice and all the food that we eat every day? Because carbohydrates are the primary source of energy for our body. So in short, carbohydrates are the energy giving food. So remember, if you don't eat something, you feel so lazy and dizzy and uneasy. So that means there is no, wala kang kabuhay-buhay minsan, di ba? Yun ang sinasabi. So in short, you need to eat so that you will be energized. Yeah. So our body needs different types of different types of glucose or saccharides, because these big macromolecules are big enough for the body to use. So there is a need for this different food to be converted into simpler substance. So it should be converted into simpler substance so that our body can use it, and those excess carbohydrates that are not needed by the body, it will be converted to glycogen that is stored in the liver or in the muscles. Okay. Okay, the first group of carbohydrates is the monosaccharides. So monosaccharides, from the word mono, that means it only contains with one saccharide. So there are three types of monosaccharide: the glucose, the galactose, and the fructose. So we'll start with glucose first. When I say glucose, usually it is found in dextrose, blood sugar. That's why when you are hospitalized and wala kang ganang kumain or hindi ka nakakain, okay, usually you have your dextrose. That is to give supplement of sugar in your body, because your body utilizes the glucose that is found in the dextrose that is given to you when you are hospitalized. Okay, so yan. And then here is the chemical formula of glucose. As you notice, there is only there is a single bond with carbon and oxygen, and then you have also there a component of OH or the hydroxide. So that is the chemical structure of glucose. Now, if you observe, glucose have three main elements present. You have there the carbon, the hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay, the second type of monosaccharide is the galactose. So galactose are usually found in milk and milk products. Okay, so dairy products. And this is the chemical formula of galactose. So as you can see, there is also a bond between the hydrogen and the OH hydroxide, and then you have there the carbon. So the main components of this compound is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now the third type of monosaccharide, the third type is fructose. Okay, fructose is usually taken or found in fruits and honey products. So this is the chemical formula of fructose. So usually fruits have this type of sugar or monosaccharides. So they have fructose. Okay, almost all fruits. So the second type is the disaccharides. When I say disaccharides, there are two saccharides present. Okay, example is maltose. This is a combination of glucose plus another glucose. So where can we find this most often? So oftentimes we found it in malt. So what is malt? Malt are usually one of the components in making beverages. Okay. So we have, maybe you can also find in the market malt sugar and other related products that are malt related. So here is the chemical formula of maltose, since there is two components of glucose and another glucose. Okay. So take note, the bond is polar. Okay, the second type of disaccharides is the sucrose. Okay, sucrose are usually found, or it has a combination of glucose plus fructose. Why? Because most of this is taken from or found in table sugar, and table sugar is taken from sugarcane and some in sugar beet. So here is the chemical formula of sucrose. If you have there the glucose on the other side, the red one, and the fructose here on the blue one. Okay, the last type of disaccharide is lactose. Okay, when I say lactose, these are a combination of glucose and galactose. So usually they are found in milk and other milk products. Now, there are some people that are born that they are not tolerant to lactose, or they have lactose intolerant. And there are some children being born that are lactose intolerant, so they should be given a special type of milk that are lactose free. Or else they might have complications or any allergy reactions if they will be given milk that are lactose um, that has lactose. So if you have that type of baby, that's very expensive. Why? Because the milk that should be given to them are a little bit expensive, especially if um, yung mga bagong silang. So, yan. Kasi they could not easily adapt to, because their immune system is not ready for any adaptations of whatever complications that might bring, because of they are given milk not that are not fitted to them. So that's very special cases. Okay. So this is the chemical formula for the lactose. Okay, the first one is the glucose and the other one is the galactose. Okay, still the bond is polar. So if you notice, the main components are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Then let's proceed to the third, which is the polysaccharides. When I say polysaccharides, these are saccharides that contains many saccharides, 2 or more. So one of that is amylose or starch. So where can we find starch? Okay, basically you are familiar where we can get starch. Okay, those are the root crops that we have, like sweet potato, cassava, sugar beets, and many more. And then aside from that, we can also get starch from the rice that we have, the cereals. Yan, sa mga pasta na ginamit natin, they have starch in it. So usually they are a storage form of glucose in plants. Now, why we have this sweet potato and potatoes and many root crops? Those are the starch that are being produced by the plants. Yun yung mga excess starch that they have. So saan siya napupunta? Doon sa kanilang mga roots, and because they are placed or stored in the roots, lumalaki din yung kanilang roots. That's why you have these root crops that we consider as starch or product of, or these are the excess starch of plants. So yung mga ube, kasama din yan siya sa starch. Okay, what else? Yan, so most familiar tayo dyan. And then, this is the chemical formula of starch or the amylose, okay, which contains plenty of, na as you can see, tatlo lang nandyan. Pero if you are going to check on the components of starch, madami yang combinations of different starch. Yan. So, kaya, still the bond is polar. It is a little bit longer chain of polar bonds. Okay, the next saccharide is amylopectin. So when I say amylopectin, this is also a storage form of glucose in plants. Now, what's the function of amylopectin, or what is pectin all about? Okay, usually pectin is a component of the cell wall. Okay, component of the cell walls of plants that would help them give their physical strength and also prevent them from, or it serves as a barrier or prevent them from the outside environment. So since the function of cell wall is, di ba sila may cell wall muna bago cell membrane, so they have double protection. So what enters and what comes out of the body of plants is regulated by the cell wall first. Then you have there the cell membrane. So this is the chemical formula or the structure of amylopectin. Now, as you can see, it has plenty of different components of glucose present in this type of polysaccharides. Okay, third type is the glycogen. Okay, glycogen is the storage form of glucose in animals, which is stored in the liver and in the muscles. As mentioned earlier, that excess carbohydrates that are not being used by the body will be stored in the liver and in the muscles. Yeah. If you notice that there is ATP there, um, so you will know later on what's the function of the liver, why liver is also, or what would be the function of the liver in the process of conversion of these macromolecules in our body. So they convert fatty acids into ATP, and this glucose also to ATP through the enzymes lactase. So later you'll identify what are the different enzymes present. So this is the structure of glycogen. So I could not find the structural formula of glycogen, but what I have here is the the diagram that will show the different connections or the different polysaccharides or the different saccharides present in glycogen. Okay, the last type of polysaccharide is cellulose. Okay, when I say cellulose, they are found in plants, especially in the cell wall of wood. Now, this is how we locate the cellulose in plants, and this is the chemical formula for cellulose. Now, remember, cellulose is a fiber. It is a type of fiber that human could not digest it. For what reason? Simply because the cellulose cannot be digested by human because the it lacks or we lack the appropriate enzymes to break down the beta acetal linkages uh, present in the cellulose. Unlike for hoofed mammals like cows, goats, and others that eat mostly with cellulose type of food, they have their bacteria inside their body that helps in digesting this type of cellulose. So for human, we don't have that. Okay, that's why we don't digest cellulose. But of course, cellulose is very important in cleansing the intestinal tract of our body. So to sum up with the carbohydrates, so basically they have the main components of elements like carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And they have also their building blocks or the monomer, which is the saccharides. So where can we find carbohydrates? Of course, in rice, in cereals, potatoes, fruits, and in pastas. Now, what's the basic function of carbohydrates? So they are the main source of energy in the body. Or in short, they are energy-giving food. So that's why we need to eat carbohydrates. Hindi pwedeng diet tayo because we need these different components for us to be energized. Okay, number 2 is lipids and fats. So what are lipids and fats? Okay, lipids and fats are very important in our body, but eating too much of it would also lead to some diseases like heart diseases, obesity. When you have heart diseases, it can also lead to hypertension, okay, because of eating too much unhealthy fats like the saturated and trans fats. Now, what's the main function of lipids or fats in our body? It serves us the material for the cell membrane, of course, okay, insulation to maintain body temperature, maintaining homeostasis, and aid in the digestion, and also signal molecule. Now, we can also classify lipids and fats into different forms, like the solid fat and the liquid form. Okay, solid fat, the solid triglycerides is known as the fat. These are the, this type of fats are usually coming from animal sources like meat, milk, butter, margarine, eggs, and cheese. While oil, we refer to the liquid type of triglyceride, which are taken, or the main source of it is the plants. Okay, example, the olive oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, the soybean oil. And take note that triglyceride contains glycerol and 3 fatty acids. Okay, that's why triglyceride contains triester of glycerol. Okay, so animal fats, remember, animal fats contain high percentage of saturated fatty acids, while plant oil are mostly unsaturated fatty acids. So that's why it is advisable to use oil that is coming from plants. The second type of lipids or fats is the phospholipids. So where can we find phospholipids? Okay, usually they are the main components of the cell membrane. It contains with 2 fatty acids, a phosphate group, and a glycerol molecule, as shown in the picture A. So you have there the, the hypophobic, the tail, and the hypophilic head. Um, the tail consists of the saturated fatty acids and unsaturated fatty acids. Now, this is we how they are arranged in the the surface of our cell membrane. Okay, next is the wax. So wax can also be a type of lipids that are responsible for, diba, there are so many types of plants that have very thick wax covering of their leaves. That is, the main function is to prevent water loss. So most of the waxes contains hydrocarbons. Aside from that, it is an esters of fatty acids with long chain of uh, monohydric alcohol and 1 hydroxyl group. So basically, waxes are esters made of an alcohol chain and a chain of fatty acids. Okay. So as I mentioned, they contains hydrocarbons. Okay, last is the steroid as the fourth type of lipids and fats. Okay, what are steroids? So steroids usually a combination of cholesterol and cortisol. Okay, they are characterized with 4-ring structure. So you have there the 4-ring structure. Okay, usually steroid is located or found in the cell membrane where they influence the membrane's fluidity. It also acts as hormones in our body. Okay, that's why they are also important. We have also different types of fats, like the saturated fatty acids, trans unsaturated fatty acids, and unsaturated fatty acids. Now, as I've mentioned, there are some fats that are not good for our health, especially the saturated fats and the trans fats. What are good source of fats are the unsaturated fats. It could be monounsaturated or polyunsaturated fats that can lower the risk of having different diseases. So what are good source or food that are high in good fats? Like vegetable oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, soy oil, could be corn oil coming from nuts, from seeds, and from fish. These are very good source of fats. There are also some vegetables or fruits that has good source of fats, like for example avocado, one of the example. And there are a lot more type of fruits that contains good source of fats. So to sum up with lipids, they are made up of three important elements like carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So they are soluble in oil, but they are not insoluble in, or they do not dissolve in water. So if you notice when you cook something and you are using oil, oil does not mix with water. And best example of lipids is the fats and oil, where fats are the solid triglycerides, while oil is the liquid triglyceride. So the main function of lipids is a long-term storage of energy in the body, and the main building blocks of lipids is the fatty acids, or the monomer. So let's proceed to proteins as the third one. So proteins are, when we talk about proteins, these are composed of elements that contains carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Okay, sometimes in some proteins it has sulfur, but basically most of the proteins contain only carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So one of the building blocks of the proteins is the amino acids. If carbohydrates have saccharides, and fatty acids, lipids have fatty acids as their building blocks. For proteins, they have amino acid. So one example of protein is the keratin. So usually they are found in your hair, in your nail, and even in your skin. So okay, uh, number two example of proteins is the fibrin or the silk protein. So where can we find this? Usually we found in silk. Okay, silk as described, they're very smooth, soft in texture. It has a very strong natural fibers, very high resistance in the deformation, and also a very good insulator or insulating material. Okay, that's why um, you can make different designs of fabrics using silk. And when you are using silk, this is a very good insulator. Okay, that's why when it is very cold, usually we are using silk type of materials to prevent us from being very cold. Then the third is collagen. So where can we find collagen as type of protein? Okay, this is a major insoluble fibrous protein found in the connective tissues such as in the tendons and also in the ligaments, in our skin, in the cartilage, and even in the cornea of the eye. It also comprises as much as 30% proteins in animals. Now, maybe you are familiar with the chicken, di ba? When you eat chicken, there are parts, the white part na kinakain nyo na very crunchy. Those are example of collagen. Okay, those are the protein part of the chicken that you are eating. So this is how we see the structure of collagen using, of course, the microscopic aid. So you have there the collagen, the fibril, then you have there the fiber, the fascicle, and then finally you have your tendons. So in short, collagen is inside the tendons of your body. Then the last one is the enzymes. So what are these enzymes? Okay, usually the enzymes function as the catalyst for the chemical reactions. So they help in the speeding up of the reactions. Okay, sometimes lower the needed energy for a reaction to take place or bind substance to their specific partners. Say, for example, in our mouth, the digestion starts in the mouth. There are some enzymes present in the mouth, present in the saliva, that helps in the digestion of food. Like for example, amylase is located in or found in our mouth, and also the ptyalin that makes the starch feel sweet when we eat. Okay. Then another enzyme is the lipase. So lipase help in the digestion of fats. Now there are some specific enzymes help in digesting a specific type of macromolecules. Then, of course, it breaks down fats into fatty acids. Then another one is pepsin. It also helps in breaking down proteins into peptides or very small units. And you have also there the sucrase, also called as the invertase, help in the digestion of sugar and starches. Yun. So these different enzymes help in the digestion process. Then the last one is the myoglobin. Okay, this is a polypeptide that stores oxygen in the muscles. It also contains a heme group which has or which contains iron where the oxygen is being stored. Okay. Or we call that one as stored oxygen. So this is how we see the structure of myoglobin with a heme and the different structures present of the components of proteins. Now, to sum up with proteins, most of the proteins, as we mentioned, it consists with carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. But for some special cases, there are some proteins that contains a small amount of sulfur. So what would be the building blocks of proteins? It is the amino acids. Okay, that is the monomer or the building blocks of proteins. In order for your body to use the protein that you eat, it should be converted first into polypeptides and then into amino acids. Then number 4 is the nucleic acids. So what are nucleic acids? They play a very special role, essential role in the storage, transfer, and expressions of genetic information. So it is very important or it is very essential. Now, when I talk about nucleic acids, we are referring to the DNA and the RNA. So what are this RNA and DNA all about? So when you talk about DNA, this is the deoxyribonucleic acid, while DNA carries the genetic code or the genetic makeup or the expression of traits. And sometimes we say that DNA is the blueprint of life. Your DNA is different from the DNA of your parents, different from the DNA of your brothers and sisters. Even if you are twins, your DNA is unique. That's why all of us are unique in our own special way. So in short, wala ka pong katulad. So kakaiba ka at unique ka. Wala kang kahawig, kung kahawig mo man siya pero not totally, the entire you is very unique and special. Kaya kung tanongin ka, ay, special ako, wala akong katulad. Okay, RNA. So this is the ribonucleic acid. So when you say ribonucleic acid, it carries information coming from the DNA. So whatever the RNA carries, it is coming from the DNA of both sides of your parents. And these are the nitrogenous base found in DNA. So these are the nitrogenous base pair. The guanine paired with cytosine and adenine paired with thymine. So these are the nitrogenous base that you see or very evident or visible in DNA. Now what about for the nitrogenous base for RNA? So for RNA, we have guanine and cytosine, adenine, and this time you don't have thymine, instead you have uracil. That is for RNA. Now, what are these nitrogenous base? Bakit kailangan sila? They are very essential in the process of the transport of traits. So we have here the types of nitrogenous base, the purines and the pyrimidines. So for the purines, we have the adenine and guanine, while the pyrimidines contain cytosine, uracil, and thymine. Now, what's the difference between pyrimidines and purines? Okay, though they are similar in functions, okay, purines consist of 6-membered and 5-membered nitrogen containing ring fused together, while the pyrimidines, they only have 6-membered nitrogen containing rings. Now, what are the different parts of the nucleotide? So the nucleotides of DNA and RNA is here. Now, as the first structure, the DNA contains the ribose sugar, a deoxyribose sugar, and it has also 5 carbohydrates of sugar. Then you have the phosphate and the nitrogenous base. Same with RNA. Okay, for RNA, it has a ribose sugar, 5 ribose sugar, and a nitrogenous base pair of adenine, guanine, cytosine, and uracil, and also the phosphate group. Okay, another structure is you can see that RNA is a single strand, while the deoxyribonucleic acid is a double helix. So you have here the nucleotide bases or the nitrogenous bases at the side, the uracil, adenine, guanine, and cytosine for RNA, while for DNA you have there the thymine, adenine, guanine, and cytosine. So what's the function of this? As we mentioned that RNA brings the genetic carries the information that is coming from the DNA, while the DNA considered as the blueprint or carries the genetic information of the organisms. So to sum up with the nucleic acids, nucleic acid contains the different elements like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. So the monomers of nucleic acid is nucleotide, while the examples of this are the DNA and RNA, where DNA carries the genetic code of the organisms, and the RNA carries the information from the DNA to ribosome to produce proteins. Now, whatever traits that you have now, or whatever characteristics that you have, that is carried by your genetic makeup. So we have here the structure of the different biomolecules. For carbohydrates, you have their CHO. Then for the lipids, you have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. For proteins, you have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. While for lipids and nucleic acids, you have CHONP. What is CHONP? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. So this is the mnemonic device that you will be um, thinking of. You have chu, chu, chon, chon. So those are the indicators of the different elements present in the biomolecules that present in our body. Okay, for the other activities, you may work with activity 1.2, meal plan. So you will be making a meal plan for 3 days. Day 1, day 2, day 3, from breakfast, morning snacks, then you have lunch, afternoon snacks, dinner, then you have your dessert. Then for activity 1.3, Maze Runner, page 181, you have there the instructions until you reach home. Then for activity 1.4, Amazing Lunch, that is on page 183. So you will just complete the table given the informations, the 3 situations given here, or the 3 scenario, based on the 3 scenarios. Then you have there also the pre-assessment in your module. Of course, for your quiz number 4, you just visit your Google Classroom. It's already posted there. It's a 20-item quiz. Part 1 is a multiple choice and an essay type. So I'll be the one to check for the essay that needs a manual checking. For activity 1, the biomolecules poem and or song, this will be your performance task. Now in this task, the rubrics is already given in your Google Classroom. So you can choose either of the two, writing a poem, writing a song, or you will sing your song, or you will be the one to render your poem. So be creative. So songs can be, you can use the lyrics of your the tune of your choice, songs of your choice, but of course the lyrics will be the concepts that you learn in biomolecules. Okay, that's all. So I'm excited to read your poems or listen to your poems and listen to your songs. For our references, still we are using the physical science of the Pivot 4A learners material, pages 163 and 194. So I hope you learned something from today's discussion and hope to see you around in our online classes. So once again, this is Mrs. Teresita B. Moreno. saying, God bless and keep safe, everyone.